Okay, in this lesson we're going to talk about being well connected. And as you've probably heard the saying, it's not what you know, but who you know. Now, having connections gives you mobility. It's the ability to move from job to job, state to state, place to place. And we all use connections. In fact, how many times have you gone onto a website looking to purchase something and went to some of the social sites and looked at what other people had to say? As a matter of fact, the camera I'm using right now is a Nikon D5300. Well, I went around to all of the camera stores in my area. I went over to some of the department stores. I went online and I looked at the reviews. I used those connections to determine not only what kind of Nikon I wanted, but the lenses that I needed and what was a good price for it. Now, connections also provide you, besides mobility, they provide you with knowledge, like we said. And knowledge is instrumental. Instrumental to success. There's an old joke about the Catholic priest, the Mormon bishop, and the rabbi, and they're out fishing on this lake. And the Catholic priest says, "Oh my gosh, I left my cell phone in camp." And he gets up and he walks across the water back to camp. And nobody says anything. And then the rabbi says, "Oh, wait a minute, I need to take my blood pressure medication." And he gets up out of the boat, walks calmly across the water back into camp. Well, the Mormon bishop looks around and he thinks, well, I can do this too. And he gets out of the boat and plunges through and goes right to the bottom of the lake. Where the rabbi turns to the Catholic priest and he says, "So, you think we should tell him where the rocks are?" And that's having knowledge. Now, connections also allow you to run in the same social circles, even though the social circles could be outside of your economic or social economic means. It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you hang out with the same people, you start to develop relationships. For instance, let's say that you want to get a promotion or you want to go to a new company, and that company is heavily invested in, let's say, a local charitable event. Well, if you start to go to those charitable events and you hang around with those people, now you're not just Joe Schmo, you're somebody they know. You have a connection. And then you can take one step further, maybe have lunch with them and get to know them on a more personal basis and eventually ask them for the job. Now, knowledge and connections are power. The last thing anybody wants in an organization is to go to a social or community event and see somebody from way down the rank and file show up and be there because it throws them off. And in fact, on some situations, they might even ask you, "What are you doing here?" So when you look at being well connected, think about the people that you are connected with. Think about the 7 degrees of separation and the old Kevin Bacon story, and see how many people you are connected to that can get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And this is Dr. Tom saying, we'll see you again in class. Now, as we continue on from the video that we just watched on being well connected, it's important that we realize it's literally not what we know, but who we know, because we live in a highly interconnected world. And you may not know somebody directly, but you can know them indirectly through associations. When I was working, doing some military intelligence work, I talked to a gentleman and found out that we had 3 connections between myself and the President of the United States. It was from me to him, from him to his mother, and from his mother, who saw the president not on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis. So there were 3 steps or 3 stages of separation. And in the military, we used a phrase called social networking analysis. And they used this when they wanted to track down bin Laden, because they didn't know specifically where he was, had a general idea, but they didn't know specifically, and specifics were very, very important to them. So what they did is they started analyzing people within the social context of Al-Qaeda. It could be that they were related by marriage, or they were friends. Maybe they went to a university outside of the country. Maybe they attended the same mosque, shopped at the same local markets. Those are overlapping connections. And eventually, the intelligence people figured out where bin Laden was, and the rest is history. Now, a couple of people that we want to look at as far as being well connected are Bill Clinton, former President of the United States, Hillary Clinton, the former First Lady of Arkansas, First Lady of the United States, and she was a Senator and Secretary of State, and thirdly, Donald Trump. And if you go back and you were to create or track down
all of the contacts that Bill, Hillary, and Donald have and put them on a big board and then start drawing overlapping circles, what we call Venn diagrams, you would see that a lot of their connections form what we call clusters. And these clusters mean that you and I and they and 10 or 15 people all kind of group together. And that's why when you look at the slide, it says that connections provide mobility, they provide knowledge, allow you to run in the same social circles, and connections are power. Now, they asked Donald Trump recently, they said, did you ever make a contribution to Nancy Pelosi for her Senate campaign? And he said, yeah, actually I did. They said, but you're a Republican and she's a Democrat. He said, I made a contribution to her re-election campaign because in the future, if I wanted to do business in California, I could call her, she would pick up the phone, take my call, and then we could carry on a conversation. And the commentator said, so you were basically buying influence. And he said, I was buying a connection. And that's just the way the world works. And so when you look at these three people, you never know where these connections are going to overlap. If you look at Bill Clinton, it was a lot of his connections that allowed him to sidestep a lot of the issues in his presidency, such as, Monica Lewinsky would be a good one, where he was able to deflect the question, did you ever have sex with that woman? And he came back with the answer, first we have to define what is. And you can see people rallying around Bill, even though they may not have approved of his actions, but they rallied around because of their interconnectability. If you look back at Hillary Clinton, you look at Benghazi, you look at Whitewater, you look at all of these things that came up in her political career ever since she and Bill first came on the stage when he ran for president. The key thing was she's able to pick up the phone, make a call, and get things to happen. I mean, how else could you have a server in your house that held classified information if you didn't have a lot of great connections? And then finally, again, going back to Donald Trump, in that interconnections allows him to do business anywhere in the world because he knows these people. So as we go forward, keep thinking about how you can become better connected. Now, if you don't have a big social network, you don't really have to worry about that because you can start today. There isn't any limitation to it. And just because you don't have one doesn't mean that it's too late. So start out small. Start out with people in your industry. Start out with people in your organization and find out where do they go to church? What do they like to do? What are their interests? What social activities do they participate in? Do they belong to any charitable organization? And start from there. And we'll be back with more lessons.